back to those familiar faces that we've seen in the past, and welcome to the new faces. We are glad to have you here with our Parents Unite event, sponsored by the Wyoming Liberty Group. Our guest speaker this evening, Lennie Jarratt. He's the project manager for the Center for Transforming Education at the Heartland Institute. He has presented analysis on Common Core and education choice on Fox News, Breitbart, ABC Chicago, and multiple radio outlets. He has been a presenter on panels discussing education choice, homeschooling, and Common Core. I introduce Lennie Jarratt. Thank you, Lennie. You got it.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. Hopefully you got the mics and everything going back there, but you'll be able to hear me without the mic going, so that's not going to be a problem. It's just the live stream that has that issue. So tonight we're going to talk about the myths and messaging of school choice. We'll focus a little bit on charter schools. How many of you here understand what school choice is already? Okay, most of you. So first let's start off, we'll go ahead and I want to go through a few definitions because I may speak a little different than you do on language and definitions, so I want to make sure that you guys know what I'm talking about. Is it changing? There we go. So public schools, I call them more traditional public schools, or the term I really like to use the most are district-run schools. Because if you think about it, they're not really public. You can't go to any school you want. You can only go to the school based on what your address is. So it's really a district-run model rather than public schools. It's kind of a misnomer there, how they've portrayed them. Public charter schools, we'll talk a little bit about this one of the myths. My daughter went to public school, then private school for a year. And so starting in 4th grade, we homeschooled her all the way through high school. My youngest daughter went to kindergarten in a local Christian school. And then we started homeschooling her the rest of the time. And the reason we started homeschooling, and one of the reasons I advocate for school choice so much, is my youngest daughter in kindergarten, the teacher had her reading to the class so she could get work done. And that's still in a private school. At the end of the year, we talked to the school about, okay, there's something going, my daughter needs to be moved up, especially in reading because she's reading so well. And they're like, have her tested, take the test to the public school. Whatever the public school will do for her, we'll match it. So we did. My daughter, ending kindergarten, was reading on a 6th grade level. We took the test to the public school, and they're like, well, she wasn't enrolled at public school. We're not going to talk to you. Went back to the private school. Well, the public school's not doing anything. We can't help you. So we started homeschooling and continued to homeschool right on through high school. Actually, my oldest daughter, it's kind of funny. One of the things we offered her the chance to go back to high school. Her response was, no, I've seen the neighborhood kids. So virtual schools is basically online schooling. I know some of you have heard about that, and I've talked to a few of you already here. That's very prevalent in a lot of areas, especially in rural areas. The virtual schools are used in a lot. Wisconsin uses a virtual school a lot because of all their rural areas, and they have a lot of charters in the urban areas, but the virtuals are used everywhere else. And private schools, which we all know about private schools, whether they're religious-based or non-religious-based. Right? So definitions of education choice. School choice is basically where you choose another school. And education choice is where the parent selects the best fit for the education of their child. It does not necessarily mean another school. It may be a mix, which is where you get into the classroom choice, where you may take a class at the public school, you may take a class at the private school, you may do a virtual class, you may do a tutoring somewhere, or even a homeschooling on part of your classes. It's totally a mix, and that's where education choice comes in. I actually like to say school choice is actually a subset of education choice, but most people are familiar with the term school choice instead of education choice, which is still the more broader term. There are several different education choice funding models. Voucher is the most commonly known, where a parent gets a certificate that pays the tuition in full for whatever school they choose. Education savings accounts is a savings account set up by the state for that specific school. The parent is then given a debit card to spend on education expenses, which may be tuition, it may be tutoring, it may be special needs classes, and maybe online classes, and it may be for other schools. They can go to any other school they want, including with ESAs. You could actually, in some areas, you can actually pick another public school to go to and pay with your education savings account. Tax credit scholarships is one of the newer things out, and it's where an individual or a corporation can donate to a scholarship granting organization, and then the person that gives that money will get a tax credit on their taxes for the state taxes and typically their federal taxes as a charitable donation. Then the scholarship granting organization grants scholarships to the students that apply through their organization. And individual education tax credit is just a tax credit for individuals for education expenses. Illinois actually does this. It's one of the few things they do well, but it's not a lot of money. Max you're going to get is $500 per child for the school year. And you can see parents want the choice because over 300,000 people in Illinois actually use the individual education tax credit during the year, paying for other educational items that they want to spend it on. Actually, Illinois is one of the highest for individual education tax credits. Okay, let's get into the myths of charter school. This is the one you hear the most. Charter schools are not public schools. You can read Wyoming state law. Charter school means a public, non-sectarian, non-religious, non-home-based school which operates in accordance with the provision basically of its charter. Right in Wyoming law, it says it's a public school. So you can see that that's the biggest myth you hear every single time out there. The next myth you hear the most often is charter schools drain money from public schools. Charter schools actually spend on average 19% less than the public schools do. In 2016, Wyoming spent $16,442 per child on education. So that's gone up since 2016. The U.S. average was just over $11,700 in 2016. So Wyoming's spending a lot more per child than the U.S. average. And also, you'll notice that Wyoming is behind on money going into the classroom. The national average is 60.8% of money goes into the classroom directly as expenditures toward the student. Wyoming is 59.3. That's millions of dollars difference when you aggregate everything that the state is spending per child. Another one you like to hear is charter schools don't accept special needs students. It's actually, again, it's required by law. They have to accept all students that apply. We'll get into the lottery thing here in a couple of minutes here, but they are subject to non-discrimination laws because they are a public school. They have no choice. And you can see stories of this all over the place. Wisconsin has a lot of special needs students that take advantage of the charters there. Florida, there's a specific case down there I'd like to cite that this student could not get his special needs covered by the school. His parents kept suing the school, and they spent, I think, about 4 years in school in the courts before he finally was able to actually take advantage of a scholarship when Florida passed one of the tax credit scholarships to be able to get out, to be able to go to a charter school, and then be able to pay for the special needs therapies and everything that he needed because of that. Arizona, same thing. They have schools specifically designed for special needs down there, and same thing. They have, with their ESA program, actually allows them a lot more flexibility too. They have students with cerebral palsy that actually do equine therapy because it helps calm the students so when they go back to do education, it really helps them a lot and gives them they can focus better on learning. And so that's some of the same things. Another myth you hear is charter schools cherry pick the best students. They can't. That's against the law. They take everybody that applies, and if there's more kids that apply than there are seats available in the charter school, there is a blind lottery. So whoever wins the lottery will be accepted. They do now allow weighted lotteries, where in areas they can actually weight the kids that are underserved the most and actually weight them a little higher to try to help them out the most, which is another kind of one of those myths that it only helps the middle class and the rich. It actually is focused on actually helping the underserved a whole lot more now with those weighted formulas and stuff that they have now. Okay, charter schools are not accountable to the public. That's another one that the public schools really like to talk about. Actually, they're more accountable than traditional public schools. They're directly accountable to the parents. Traditional public schools, how many of you ever seen a traditional public school shut down for poor performance? There's very, very few ever shut down. There are some that does happen in some states, but very, very seldom. And if you look at the statistics, it usually takes like 2 decades before they're going to shut down a bad, poor performing public school. In Arizona, I like to talk about this. Arizona actually they've been doing charter schools since 1993. And one of the things they do, they have a 10-year period for all charters. And then the state will review the charter's performance to see how they're performing and what they're doing, to see if they're bad charters, because they've been running for so long. They've gone to a longer period of renewal. They have shut down 1 charter school for underperformance. And what they found out is the parents shut down all of the bad charter schools long before the state ever got around to looking at the performance. The parents held the school more accountable than the state ever could. Traditional public schools can meet the needs of every student. When in reality, it creates a one-size-fits-some system. They always talk about they have to meet the needs of everybody. They don't. We can see that with special needs kids. There's a case just last year in Illinois where this girl's 10 years old, going to the school. She had to have a service dog. The school refused to let her come to school with her service dog. Her parents spent $70,000 fighting the school district because of this. She is now going to a private school, and the local public school is now paying for her private school tuition because of that, because they could not meet her needs and service her. And you see this in more and more stories all around. This happens in every state, not just Illinois or in Florida. It's happening all over. So when the public schools try to tell you this, it really is a myth on their part. It's not true for what they are doing. The other thing here is it doesn't help you. It doesn't help the accelerated students for the most part. When you're going to a public school, they really help the kids in the middle. They try to bring the kids at the bottom up. And the kids that are at the top are kind of left out. I've dealt with a lot of this with parents trying to ask me what they can do, how they can help get their kid into the classes they need. One student that I know specifically, he was in 8th grade and was fighting the school district because they were not helping his kid. Finally, I connected them with the local community college. One of the professors there started teaching him, especially in math, was his gift. And he started going to the community college in 8th grade to do his math studies and stuff because he was so far advanced from all the other kids. The public school could not meet his needs at all. My story is a little similar to that. I went to private school for 1st grade through 3rd grade, never went to kindergarten. Private school, actually, all the way through 5th grade. Well, went to school from 1st and 2nd, then 3rd through 5th, I went to a different school. And it was actually a 2-room schoolhouse. Grades 1 through 4 were in one classroom. 5 through 8 were in the other classroom. There were 2 people in my grade. Me and one other kid that was our grade. And the teacher shared time with all of us. We'd go up to her desk and she'd do a half hour, 40 minutes with each of us on our lessons. We'd go back to our desk and do our work and then switch off. If we had questions, we'd come back after she was done with the other grades. But I switched to public school starting in 6th grade. Because I lived in the county, they wouldn't test me to see what grade level I was at. So 6th and 7th grade, I sat in school doing nothing but reading. My teacher let me do that because she realized I knew what they were going through. So I'm sitting there reading for all of 6th and 7th grade, not doing any of the lessons because I already was so far above where the other kids were at that time. As I progressed on through school, got to 10th grade, we had our history teacher actually went out on maternity leave, so we had a substitute history teacher. Because of all my reading, I love to read about history. Our substitute teacher actually had me helping teach the class in 10th grade because he didn't want to do it, so he was having me help him do it, which was fun for me at the time, but it's just a lack of, they weren't worried about what my needs were, they were just worried about what they were doing. Thankfully, in 10th grade, I also had one of the best teachers I ever had, Mr. Joyner. He found out that I could really do math well. So he stoked that fire in me, kept giving me the hardest problems, kept pushing me to be the best I could and learn and not care what the other students were doing, but just grow and do it myself, which really, really kicked me into high gear studying again, because before that, I never studied, because I kind of knew what was going on. I kind of knew it, so I started studying again. And after 11th grade, I actually went to a summer class on computers. I'm old enough to at the beginning of PCs, so I went to a summer class that year, found out during that summer class of a month of computer classes that I could actually attend our local junior college instead of going to high school. So I applied, got in, but I couldn't finish the paperwork because my high school refused to send my transcript to the college. They cared more about the money of having me in the high school than they did about my education. And finally, I went to my high school, sat there for 4 hours in the counselor's office until they gave me a copy of my transcripts that I could then take back to the local college. And I went on to college that year in my senior year and never looked back since. So that's a lot of the problem we have, is the schools care more about the money than they do about the kids' education, especially a lot with accelerated students or kids with special needs, stuff like that. Parents need to be empowered to be able to make those choices and get the kids into an education environment that they can learn and excel in. Charter schools are part of a scheme to privatize public education. I'm sure some of you have heard that around. Well, in fact, 85% of all charter schools in the country, over 7,000, are all not-for-profits. There are some private for-college charter schools out there. One of them I know, National Heritage, actually, they are for-profit, but they only go into the inner city, and they work in the inner cities helping the kids there, helping the underserved populations. And it's one of their slogans is actually great. In God we trust, everybody else must bring data. They review their data, they know what works, and then they expand based on what they know works. And that's really a lot of the key, is finding out what works and then continuing perpetuating those systems that work. Because there are charter schools that aren't good and do fail because they're not doing the individual outcomes, they're not helping the kids learn. Charter schools don't enroll children from underserved families. We've talked about this before. A majority of charter schools are actually in urban areas. You can see from the breakdown that charter schools actually treat a more diverse population than traditional public schools across the country. So it's just a total myth that they don't treat underserved students. They actually do that more than any other group, is how they're doing it. Actually more than private schools, more than the public schools themselves, because that's how their models are set up. That's how their lotteries are set up, to make sure they're reaching the underserved communities. Real quick, before I move on to this, I was in Milwaukee looking at their charter schools one time and got to interview a high school senior. She was getting ready to go to college. She took 3 buses to her charter school every single morning because she valued education so much that when she got in there. And she told me when we were interviewing her, it was a group of us actually being able to interview her. She said, I know if I'd have been in the public schools in Milwaukee, I'd have either been dead or in prison. And that's what public charter schools and other schools, school choice does. It enables people to get out of their current situation and build a better life for them. I know y'all just had Denisha Merriweather here not long ago, who was able to escape in Florida with one of the tax credit scholarships and be able to get out of where she was. There's a school in Chicago that's actually an all-boys charter school. They're on their 7th year in a row now where every student that graduates has offers and have been accepted into colleges, and most of them have scholarships to be able to go into college. So charter schools do not perform any better than district-run public schools. They love to throw the statistics around, and you know how you can make statistics lie. They will leave numbers out, or they'll shade the way it does. But these are the numbers from the studies on what they do. On average, charter schools present an extra 7 days of learning in both reading and math. Urban, it's 28 to 40 days. And this is compounded every single year, how much extra learning these kids are getting because they're in a charter school. And if you notice, this last study, within a mile of a public school or co-located, that study was done in New York City with the charters in New York City. And the closer a charter school was to the public school, the greater the education outcomes were in those schools. You can see that New York voucher study showed 24% increase in African American students enrolling in colleges that were able to attend charter schools. 9 of the top 10 of America's most challenging high schools are charter schools. 6 of the top 10 in U.S. News & World Report are ranked with charter schools. 60% of the top 100 are charters or magnet schools. Magnet schools are selective enrollment specialty schools inside the public school system as well, but they are selective where charter schools are not. And I believe it's 5 of those 6 top schools, U.S. News Report rankings, are charters in Arizona. Charter schools get rid of students they don't want. Yes, there is some of that. It's a very low prevalence. There are some charter schools that try to cheat and kick students out, but public schools will do the same thing to try to get students out of their schools. There have been 2 documented incidents in Illinois that I know about. I know there's probably some others. There's been some other test cheating in Washington, D.C. and in Atlanta. But the way they do it in Illinois is when they had the testing where the juniors were the ones tested, they would hold students back in 10th grade that they knew were not going to do well on the standardized test. At the end of basically what should have been their 11th grade year after the testing was over, they jumped them to 12th grade. They became seniors. They skipped the whole 11th grade part of their testing, so all of their testing numbers were artificially inflated. And that's how a lot of public schools are cheating on their test scores. And Atlanta has had that same scandal, and Washington, D.C. has also had the same problems there. Cheating is a lot more prevalent on standardized tests than most people think about. One of the things you'll see on my card is actually stop the test, because my take is standardized tests really don't help the student. You're looking at the in-growth of the school. It's the school year where the growth is in the school year is really what the teachers need to know. But a standardized test, do you realize standardized tests are usually taken in February, March? The results of those standardized tests don't come back typically till October or November of that year. Those students have already moved on to the next grade. They don't help the teacher one bit. They're basically, standardized tests like that are basically just tools for bureaucrats to say, oh, look at our schools are doing great now. That's really what standardized testing is for. It's really about the growth in year is really where we need to be focusing on, and what the teachers can actually use to see that their students are actually learning. And a lot of charter schools have switched to a lot of this testing, and a lot of that they're already doing long before the traditional public schools have started to do that. Nation's report card shows you kind of a snapshot of all of your neighboring states here. Wyoming's in red. You can see 4th grade reading, Wyoming's actually right at the top. 8th grade reading, though, they're back in the middle. Math, same thing. You're at the top in 4th grade math. You're back in the middle again by 8th grade math. When you get to science, again, you're almost at the top. You're just below the top. In 4th grade science, 8th grade science, you're way down and in the bottom. So there is an issue with education as the students are progressing upward in the grades that you can see reflected here is not reflecting the outcomes that's happening. And the next slide is very similar, but it goes into ACT scores. Wyoming's at the bottom overall in average composite scores. That's your college readiness testing that tells you how many of your kids are being ready for college, and Wyoming's at the bottom. So by the time they become seniors, they are not proficient and ready for college at the same level of your neighboring states around here. So that becomes a real issue. So if anybody wants these slides, feel free to pick up my card out there and email me, and I'll be happy to send you the whole presentation so you'll have the links so you can go look up the data and all that yourself. Be happy to do that. I think Wyoming Liberty is actually going to have them as well and post them on their website as well. All right. So charter school laws in Wyoming. You had a charter school law passed in 1995. Colorado passed one a couple of years before. Colorado now has 226 charters. Wyoming has 4. You have 500 charter students in the entire state. 0.53% of your students can attend a charter school in Wyoming. You are way behind what some of the other states are doing. The Montana, Nebraska, and South Dakota haven't even passed the charter school law at all yet. So you're ahead of them. But you're basically rated as a D by Ed Reform and their charter school law review. So you have some work to do. Charter school laws, right now, your local school boards are the authorizer. They have annual reporting requirements. There's no independent charter authorizers. Their waiver process is inconsistent because each school district can set up their own reviews. Each one can set up the length of the charter, making it very, very difficult to get investment and start new charters because they don't know how long they're going to be around because they could revoke the charters. And charter school teachers must be certified. I believe you're the only state that requires all the charter school teachers to be certified. Illinois doesn't even require them all to be certified. Illinois does require a majority to be certified, but not all of them. And certifying teachers really doesn't tell you what the education outcomes are going to be. Actually, teacher quality and their subject matter mastery is the biggest indicator of how well a teacher is going to do with their students. And this is one of the biggest problems you see across the charter school sector and even some private schools that want to put all this weight on teacher certification. It's not necessary for the most part. It's what the teacher knows that really is the driving force on educational quality. Okay, this study was actually just put out about a month ago. It was by Cato Institute and the Heritage Foundation. They took a look at study on regulations on all school choice programs. You can see if you mandate open enrollment, which would include not only charters, but also open enrollment on private schools, so there was no selectivity and you couldn't, a lot of the Catholic schools would not, they want students that believe what they believe for the most part. Not always, not all of them do, but some do. But when you do that mandate, there's a very strong correlation of 70 to 84% that schools will not participate in that school choice program because of that one mandate. And that's what happened in Louisiana, which I'll have some statistics on Louisiana just to show you what's happened down there because of the regulation. Specifically, only the schools that needed money, that were not actually the better performing schools, they were the poorer performing schools, participated in their voucher program down there. Because the good schools, the best schools, did not participate at all because of the regulations. They were so heavily regulated. Mandated state standardized testing. This is another one. A lot of private schools do not want to take the state mandated test. Florida has actually worked around this now. Florida has a menu of state tests that schools can take. They do not make you take one test. Wyoming has one test, the PAUSE test, that charter schools and public schools take. Homeschoolers can actually take it, but they're not mandated to. Iowa just got rid of their mandate on homeschoolers taking the test. Illinois, it's optional. You do not have to take the test for homeschoolers, but they are mandating on a lot of that you have to take the test with their new tax credit scholarship program. You do have to take the state test now in Illinois. Indiana requires that. They required it to allow them, the private schools to actually charters too, to participate in the sports leagues in Indiana. Is why they mandate. Florida, what Florida did was give the menu. And people always say, well, a different test is a different test. You got to test everybody the same, which is not really true. Because in math, which was my major, but there's a thing called psychometrics. It allows people to actually go into a test and look at the test versus another test and actually figure out what the correlation is between the two tests so you can do an apples to apples comparison among different tests. The key is making sure it's a nationally normed test so there's reference points where everything is done by, and you can actually compare lots of tests that way, and that's what Florida does, so it's not a mandated state test. The other thing that a lot of schools don't allow is prohibiting co-payment or per $1,000 of tax rate. This is insignificant, but it's still there. And the more common term that people hear about this is called topping off. So In some voucher programs, your tuition is what you get. That's what all you're going to get. So a lot of good schools will not take vouchers because their tuition is actually higher than what the voucher is paying for, and they don't want to take that lower amount of money. Where topping off then comes in is allowing the parents or some other scholarship to be able to be added to that voucher so that it covers the full tuition of what that school normally charges. And that's one of the things here, $1,000 per tuition increase. And most states don't like to actually add in topping off and stuff. Topping off is a lot easier to remember than prohibiting copayments. So, what would encourage charter growth here in Wyoming? Independent authorizers. Your colleges should be able to authorize and monitor charter schools. Actually, Illinois does do this. University of Chicago has, I think it's about 10 charter schools now that they are the authorizer, they do everything for, they monitor, and the charter is done through them. Other states have the same process where your colleges and universities can actually do the charters without going through the local school board. More charter autonomy. If there's problems in your public schools, and then you regulate the charter school to look exactly like the public school, what do you think the outcome's going to be? It's going to be the same. So you need more autonomy, the freedom to not have to have all certified teachers, the better freedom for different waivers to be able to get so they can be different. And that's the best way to do it. You want a diversity of charter schools. You want to be able to entice STEM schools. You want to be able to cite technical schools. Michigan has a flight school for high school. It's a charter school in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the kids go, they have their pilot's license by the time they graduate from high school. So it gives them a career where they may not have to go to college if they don't want to. It's up to them. But it's just that diversity of being able to learn, and the students can then use their passion, which is really what drives educational outcomes. If you don't tap into what a child's passion is, they're never going to be excited about education. They're never going to want to learn. And I'm the kind of the example of that myself, where I didn't take off learning and really wanted to learn till 10th grade till I had that one math teacher. And that's kind of thing, tapping into students' passions. And parents know better what a student's passion is, what they like to do, than a school bureaucrat will ever know, or a state legislator. And that's why parents should have a lot more accountability and a lot more flexibility to be able to choose the school or just the education options that are going to fit the needs for that child. So like I said, more diversity of learning option, more parental accountability, an independent and easier waiver process. The local school district should not be the one approving all the waivers and dealing with the charter authorization. There has to be a way, even if you have the local school district being the first step for that, they need to be able to appeal that to a state board, an independent board, to be able to do that. Illinois actually had to do this because all the charter schools were getting denied in Illinois because the local school district wasn't going to do that. They weren't going to give the charter school part of the money that they didn't want to lose these students. They wanted to force these students to stay. And so the state had to create a state charter board that schools could appeal to if they wanted to do that. I still have yet to see a charter school in Illinois go through that process and get approved the first year, though. They will get denied by the district, then they will get denied by the state board, then they have to come back next year and make their application even bigger to finally get through. And a lot of them get through second or third year, and it's ridiculous. I've heard stories about Wyoming, how the packet for the application process is like 6 or 7 inches thick. I mean, that's insane to have to go through, and that's why you don't get as many charters, because there's no flexibility there. It's very stringent, it's overburdening to the authorizers, and they don't want to spend the time or the money to go through the process, because a lot of those charter boards, they're not for profit. So there are a lot of them are volunteers. They're parents. They're wanting to charter school, they want an option. The more you restrict it, actually, the more you end up doing exact opposite, where you get providers that are professional providers coming in that want to do that. Some of them do want to make it for more of a profit, but they're still not for profits. There's charter management organizations that will want to come in. But the good thing about charter management organizations is when you look at their record, you can see in other states what their outcomes have been. So they've already have a proven model. They already know what works, and that's the good thing about charter management organizations that I know public schools don't like, is because they already know what works. They can come in, hit the ground running a lot faster than a lot of times a local parent trying to start up a charter school. I worked with them in Chicago, a classical education charter school, part of the Barney Charter School Initiative, which actually is an offshoot of Hillsdale Academy. And I tried to help them in Chicago bring in a classical charter school there. They don't have a classical charter anywhere. None of the charter schools in Illinois are classical charter schools. None of the ones in Chicago public schools are, even though they have 110 charter schools within the city. They all teach basically the same thing that the public schools are teaching in Chicago. They do get better results in the elementary school. The one thing they haven't done, actually it's the opposite way, they get really good results in the high schools. Elementary school, their kids are almost basically the same. They have not been able to actually break that mold. They stay pretty even with the Chicago public schools at the elementary school level, but by the time they hit high school, the charter schools are ranked so much higher. Actually, 10 of that last year was 9 out of 10. This last year, 10 out of the top 11, because there was a tie for number 10, are all charter schools. Non-selective, so they go through the lottery process in Chicago. The top 10 schools in Chicago public school system are all charter schools, actually top 11, because there was a tie at number 10. So it shows you what can be done with charter schools. I want to touch a little bit on homeschooling, because that's always a great option, is that I homeschooled my kids, one of them from 4th grade all the way through high school, and the other one basically starting right after kindergarten all the way through high school. One has graduated from college with honors. The other one has a year left on a 5-year program, so she'll graduate next December. You have annual requirements here. You have to submit your curriculum to the school district. You have to teach reading, writing, math, civics, history, literature, and science. But the testing is not required. It's optional. You can take it if you want, free of charge here. What I did, I always took the California Achievement Test like every 2 years or 3, depending on where the kids were, because I wanted to know where they were as myself. But it was optional in Illinois too. But you're overregulated. Why does this local school district have any say in what you're doing as a homeschooler? There's no reason for them to have to approve the curriculum that a homeschooler is using, when on average, homeschoolers are testing about 2 years above what the public schools are already. So there's no need for that extra regulation. You've got to get your homeschoolers more involved up here, build that relationship with them to get them talking to state legislators. It gave us, talking to Wyoming Liberty early, I gave them a suggestion. What we do in Illinois, we actually have what's called cherry pie days. So late March, early April, all the homeschoolers are encouraged to come to Springfield, bring 2 cherry pies with them. They will have a rally where several state legislators will come, several grassroots activists will come, talk about the homeschooling. Some of the people that were around at the beginning of homeschooling in the early 80s in Illinois sometimes will come talk about the struggles they went through and all the legal stuff they had to go through to get homeschooling legal in Illinois. And then you and your kids, your homeschoolers, take 2 pies. You go see your state senator. You go see your state rep, meet with them, talk to them about homeschooling and other issues, and give them a cherry pie. What this has done over the years, now they've been doing this for a little over 20 years now. The secretaries of all those state reps and state senators, whenever there's a bad homeschool bill, they call all of the homeschooling organizations in the state, and it goes out to everybody's network. 2012, they wanted to have a bill in committee to register all homeschoolers in the state of Illinois. In 1 week time, 4,000 homeschoolers were standing in the rotunda in the Capitol. The bill was pulled out of committee before they finished the rally in the rotunda. So homeschoolers have a very powerful lobby that most people don't even think about and realize what's going on, because they've already made the conscious choice. I want something different for my child. I have made a choice to educate my child at home. If there were other options, maybe they would have chosen a private school, maybe they would have chosen a charter school, but that's their only option for the most part if they can't afford to pay for private school. So homeschool is a great group to reach out to and talk to and build that coalition with, and getting them involved with anything you're doing. Okay. How much power do parents have in Wyoming currently? Go ahead. This report was just released today, the Parent Power Index by the Center for Education Reform. They release this every year. Wyoming is ranked number 45. You don't have a lot of parental empowerment in Wyoming. You can see education choice, 0. Personalized learning, 0. Charter school, 62% D. Teacher quality, 65%, a D. Transparency is the only thing that's higher at 80%. And I understand from talking to Wyoming Liberty, there's no enforcement penalties, so that number is probably way too high. It should be much lower than that. So you have a lot of work to do to empower parents here in Wyoming. Do parents want education choice? That's always the next question. 63% of parents, if they had the choice, would choose something other than their local district school. That's a national average. I don't know, I've never been able to find the statistics specifically on Wyoming, but when you base this nationally, it's probably close to the same thing. So this is a fun question. What government program has a 100% satisfaction rate among its participants? Does anybody have a guess? Or do you think there's not one? There actually is one. The Education Savings Account program in Arizona has a 100% satisfaction rate among its participants. And the one thing you will notice, the group with the highest extremely satisfied group is the group making under $28,000 a year. 89% are very, very satisfied with their choices they have available with the education savings accounts. So your next question would be, what about when they weren't, when they were still in the public school? Were they satisfied with their public school? No. And again, the group making less than $28,000, you had 56% were very dissatisfied with their public school, and another 11% were somewhat dissatisfied. So it's 67% of parents were somewhat or dissatisfied with their local school district. So these statistics are very, very enlightening, and this will be the same across multiple states. And I'll show you one more quick state. This study just came out actually also about a month ago. They did a study on satisfaction in Florida with their tax credit scholarship program. 93% of parents were somewhat or completely satisfied with the choices they had because of the scholarships they were able to receive through their tax credit scholarships programs. So parents want school choice, absolutely, and they are very satisfied when they can get it. And a lot of them don't tell you how dissatisfied they are with the public schools because they don't have any hope that it's going to change. But you can see that hope if you've ever watched a documentary on like the Cartel or Waiting for Superman, when they show some of the charter lotteries. Parents will be bawling when their child gets selected and they know they can go to a charter school. Parents will also be bawling when their child is not selected because they know their child is now going to be stuck in the same public school that they're dissatisfied with. And this is why you need parental empowerment. Parents want a better education for their child. They're just not able to have the choice. And Wyoming is one of those states that you really need a lot more choice here because parents, I guarantee, are just, they want it, but they don't know what to do and how to get it. And the legislature really isn't helping a lot with being able to do it. Wyoming Liberty is doing great work trying to work with that. And I would encourage you to work with Wyoming Liberty on trying to push some of these initiatives and educate the legislators on what parents really want and what parents need and some of the other options that some of these other states are providing and how they're working and how they can work in Wyoming. Does school choice actually work? Yes, these are a review of the gold standard studies, which are studies where it was randomized access, where they studied schools that got in to school choice, got their choice, and those that didn't. You will notice here only one, well, it's actually two here that show a negative effect. And that's Louisiana, which I mentioned earlier. That is actually the same data set. So it's really only one study because the same data set was used for both of those studies by two different people. And again, it's the regulation in Louisiana prevented a lot of the best schools from joining in the program, and that's why you see these results. You have one school, New York, no visible effect. All students and positive effect, and on some students, you can see the thing here. The overwhelming majority, there was some or a lot of positive effect because students had a choice. And one of the other things you get when you do these studies, you notice parental involvement. Teachers like to talk about we need more parental involvement. When parents have a choice, parental involvement actually increases because they have hope that their student's going to be able to do something, so they get a lot more involved with the school. So what about the public schools? What happens to the public schools that these students are leaving? Every study but one shows a positive effect. The one lone one in DC shows no visible effect. So there are no negative effects to the local public schools when there is a school choice program. And the majority of them show a positive effect. So as we saw earlier in that charter school study about the proximity of a charter school to a local public school, it's the same thing here. The more choice there is, the more the local district schools have to also improve because of the competition, and they do. So what are some of the best messaging when you're talking about promoting education choice? Well, some of the terms I like to use more are education freedom, education choice, parental choice, or even classroom choice, because that's kind of where we're heading in a lot of respects. A lot of parents are still used to, okay, school choice, I have to pick another school. But the way education is changing, eventually you're not going to have to pick another school. Homeschoolers have already proved that you don't have to pick another school. So that's kind of going there, but for now, people like to have the brick and mortar school. That's what they're used to. But calling it education choice starts to break down some barriers because it's different than school choice. Immediately when you say school choice, a lot of times, they immediately think vouchers and start negative connotations to it, where education choice is a lot more open and a lot easier when you're talking to people and getting them to actually listen to you. The best choice programs are actually education savings accounts and tax credit scholarships. Charters are one step along those paths. Charter schools are good. They do help a lot of students, but the best programs are down the road, what Arizona's doing and what Florida's doing. And so if those are the cutting edge, so they're way beyond where Wyoming's not ready for that yet, honestly. They're not ready for all of that yet. But charter schools are a great first step to really starting breaking down and showing parents that what choice does, how choice matters to them and how it matters to their child. School terms, I like to call them district schools, as I explained before, because that's really what they are. They're not public, they're district-run schools. You can't go there unless you're in that district. And charter schools, I like to call public charter schools, because that's what they are. They are a public school chartered by the local school district or some other authority. Wyoming's only by the local school district. They are public charters. So if you start using that, you start breaking down that myth about charter schools are not public schools when they are. It's just kind of one of those things to kind of use when you're talking to people, especially legislators, so they understand that you know, okay, a charter school is a public school. The terms I don't like to use quite as much, vouchers. Vouchers are great. Indiana has the best voucher program in the entire country. But vouchers, for the most part, have a very negative connotation. You will actually hear people talk about education savings account or tax credit scholarships and call them voucher programs or backdoor voucher programs. The way they're funded, they're not vouchers at all because they have so much more flexibility than what a voucher allows you to do. So it's one of those terms you'll hear a lot, but it's one of the terms you should actually use less and less. Charter schools are not funded with vouchers. They're funded directly from the district. And so there's no voucher involved with charter schools whatsoever. School choice, I like to use education choice a lot more than I do school choice because there's a lot more flexibility there. People understand school choice, so you're going to use that term a lot when you're talking to people because that's what they understand. And to reach people, you have to talk to them where they are. You have to understand their language and use their language to actually talk to them and show them, oh, there's a better way here. There's more options than you think. And that's one of the ways to kind of start that. Cost savings and return on investment. Charter schools and other school choice programs invariably save the state money. But it's something parents do not want to hear you talk about when you're talking about we're doing this to save money. They don't want to hear that. All they care about is the education of their child. The cost savings is a benefit. That's something the legislatures to talk to and talk about and deal with and stuff, because they have a crisis coming as well. Most state budgets, their top two budget problems are Medicaid and education. There is actually a baby boom. I don't know how it is in Wyoming. There is actually the Foundation for Excellence in Education actually has a study out on it that over the entire country, they do have the state breakdown. I should have looked at it for Wyoming. I forgot about to look at that. But between now and 2030, the K-12 population is going to increase by, I think it's about 30 or 40%, depending on what state you're in. It's really going to put a strain on state budgets, and they have to start figuring out a way how they can manage those costs. They cannot keep going to the taxpayer and saying, give us more money for education. Every study you will look at and show, money is not the answer for education anyway. It's teacher quality and subject matter mastery. And that's one of the things I always like to talk about this. In Illinois, the regulations are so bad on teachers. Bill Gates could not teach a computer class in the state of Illinois. Albert Einstein could not teach a science class in the state of Illinois. They would both have to go back to school before they could teach in the state. I actually considered going into teaching myself and doing computer science. I did computer science and database design for 20 years and thought about going back into school, teaching in schools and putting my knowledge to work. I could not do that without going back to school. And I wasn't going to spend that kind of money to go back to school to do that. So that's another problem that Wyoming, your legislators need to look at, is how much is required for teacher certification, what you have to do, and the expenses, and the barrier for getting people into that. You have scientists around Wyoming. You have people with a lot of industry experience. You have CPAs. They can't just go into the school and start teaching, but they should be able to, because that's your biggest indicator of what school outcomes education outcomes are going to be, is the subject matter mastery. So you got people that have been working for 20 years and are now retiring. They've got all this knowledge that they could share with the next generation, but they're not being allowed to. And that's just, it's a shame that you're losing all of that knowledge that's there available right now that you could have. It's the same thing, getting rid of the teacher certification on charter schools. You would have a lot of those people try to go to teach in the charter schools because of that very thing, getting rid of a lot of the teacher certification rules and the barriers that are there to prevent them from going into teaching. Okay, here's a little bit about public schools, how they've grown over the years. So you can see the beginning, how telephones used to be. Then they kind of changed to having the two earpiece and phone piece, and they kind of hung on a wall, still a rotary dial for everything. And you had the little black phone for Ma Bell you're still plugged into the wall. You can't go anywhere. You're limited by where the cord is. Then you get to the wireless, where you can walk around the house. You can be inside the house anywhere. You can even possibly go outside depending on the range of your phone. But you can see over 100 so years, very little changed. And that's what's happening with our public schools. There's been very little change. You're still sitting in a classroom 770 to 800 hours, whether you're learning anything or not. It's the same model over and over again. But the iPhone has completely changed a lot of stuff. Now you're walking around with a computer in your pocket that has more power than what put man on the moon. And Steve Jobs would never have envisioned the uses that the iPhone has now. There's an app for almost everything. You can watch TV. You can take pictures. You can send email, listen to the radio. There's even apps for telemedicine. You can do eye exams. You can do EKGs. You can do all sorts of therapies and all sorts of things just by plugging in extensions to your iPhone or just by an app on your iPhone. This is what charter schools and school choice brings to education. We don't know exactly where education is going to take us, but somebody's going to invent it if they have the availability. School choice can open up a vast new array of education opportunities that we haven't even thought of. But it's just there for the creating now. We just have to make sure the system starts to allow it. One quick stat I didn't bring the slide for. I thought I'd be going into a little bit too much. One of the other reasons why education choice is really, really useful. Wyoming is actually ranked number 10 in bullying. Bullying is a huge factor in lowering educational outcomes. One student is bullied every 7 minutes. 160,000 students skip school every day for fear of being bullied. And there's over 1 million incidents across the country of serious violence inside the schools. Not only student on student, but actually teacher and staff on student as well is becoming a lot more common, unfortunately. And that's one of the things school choice actually does, lower those incidents of violence and actually starts to help the student. A student in Georgia actually was bullied, and she had very, very bad grades. Georgia passed a tax credit scholarship. She was able to get one of those scholarships to attend. Actually, I believe she went to a private school, but one of the others I know went to a charter school. But her grades immediately went up. She ended up being number 2 in her class just because she got away from the bullying that was happening in the school. And Wyoming has a major problem with that here that needs to be looked at and dealt with as well. And school choice is one of the answers to that. So we're going to open it up to questions now. We'll have 2 microphones coming around, actually just one now because I have the other one. Please wait till the microphone is in front of you before you start asking your question. Raise your hand, keep it up. Because they're live streaming, they want people online to be able to hear your question. So we need the mic for that to make sure everybody can hear your question. So if you've got a question, please raise your hand. No questions? I didn't go over everything I could have. So
I'm a retired licensed professional engineer. Okay. When I retired, I was thinking of going out and as a volunteer teach high school physics and calculus.
Right.
Could not do it. I didn't have education courses.
Yep.
Okay. One of the things I did was accreditation of engineering schools. Every 5 years, engineering school has to be accredited, again, reaccredited. That's so that people graduating qualify for PE exam. Okay. No, that's not good. That didn't count. You know.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's the same thing that happens in Illinois. It's other states have the exact same problem. Actually, I went to Ohio early this year to testify. They were going to looking at redoing their teacher certification process, and they had superintendents in there talking to them. That one of the superintendents, his daughter went to school in Florida. She came back to Ohio to teach. She was not allowed to teach in Ohio because she didn't have the right education in Ohio. She would have had to go back to school to teach in Ohio to get her license in Ohio to teach. So it's the same thing we're talking about, teacher certification, the barriers to getting people in for a second career, even for people trying for their first career, are a problem.
I could guarantee I had more math and physics than 99.999 of the teachers out there.
Yep.
Plus, what I had practical experience.
Yep.
You know, it's pumps and everything else, and no good, can't do that.
Yep. That's the same thing I ran into with all my computer programming and stuff. I could not go teach in the schools.
And the second thing, I went to a specialized high school, Brooklyn Technical High School, New York City. Entrance was by a competitive exam on math and English. Now the idiot they got for mayor wants to get rid of that, make it like a neighborhood high school. The courses I had there were the equivalent or better than I had in undergraduate and even graduate school. Undergraduate is mechanical engineering, master's is civil engineering. You wouldn't call those basket weaving, would you?
Nope, not at all. Yeah, they've made a lot of changes in New York on the way the schools are, and he's trying to kill a lot of the school choice options, the charter schools and stuff there as well right now. So it's a major problem. So over here, and then we'll come back.
I was surprised of the study that we have so much bullying in Wyoming schools. How did they measure that? What are they really looking at?
They looked at the prevalence of teen suicides, the attempted suicides, then the reported incidents of bullying through the Department of Education statistics, everything that gets recorded through that, the number of skip days and there's a whole bunch of different things. I don't even know everything they put into it, but they go through it. Actually, Wallet Hub did the study, and I can get you the link to that to look more in depth of the study about how they did it. They kind of talk about their whole methodology, but it was like 6 or 7 things that they looked at for every school. The cost of truancy, because of that, how much that cost, and those regulations that went into it as well. I know was a part of that rating.
Thank you.
So, a question right here.
Just a quick question, Mr. Jarratt. Is there any state that allows the parents' tax dollars to follow the student to whatever school they want?
Not implicitly, no. Except the individual education tax credit, which is usually very limited in almost all states, then that's based on your spending money in a specific school. All the tax credit scholarship programs and stuff, you are not able to direct the money to your school, your student at all. It's the scholarship granting organization has rules in place where they prevent that kind of stuff from happening. So you can donate to a tax credit scholarship, so your tax money is going to help somebody, but it may not be your child, but it's somebody's child, and then somebody else is donating that would help your child. So,
What are the main points that you'd like to see? We're bringing a charter school bill before the legislative session, this coming 2019 session. What do you see as the most important thing to ask for?
There's actually 2 things. Getting rid of teacher certification requirements for charter schools, but having independent authorizers. Those 2 would be the biggest key in starting to change and starting to grow the charter school sector here in Wyoming. You need kind of both of those to kind of start that process.
Thank you.
I know I covered a lot of material. There's actually a lot of stuff I didn't actually cover too. But yes, I love going around talking about school choice. It's a passion for me based on my background, what I went through with my kids, and what I've seen with other kids and talking to them and other parents, helping other parents navigate some of that. And I will go to a lot of the homeschool shows and talk to them as well, because I homeschool. So I heard their stories and stuff as well about why they chose to homeschool. And a lot of it was because they had no other options. They couldn't go to another school. They couldn't afford a private school, so they started homeschooling. And that's it's out there. One of the biggest reasons parents actually choose to get out of the public school is safety. If it's 53% of parents choose because of safety to get a different education option. Most people think it's religious based. It actually used to be in the 70s and early 80s, it actually was, but that's not the case anymore. It's mostly safety. And then academics is actually number 2. So Washington, D.C., when they passed their voucher program, I listened to some of those things, and parents will sit there and talk about they didn't care if their child got a better education in another school. They just knew their child was going to walk back in that door after school and be safe. And that was their biggest driver. That was their choice. They didn't care if the school was any better or not, but they knew their child was coming home every day.
You've talked a lot about solutions for urban schools and hot, dense population areas. What's happening in rural areas where we're so dispersed in Wyoming? That's a real issue for us.
Wisconsin is the perfect example. They use virtual schools to help with their rural. They've got a lot of rural areas as well. They've got Milwaukee, Madison, and Green Bay. Everything else is out in the middle of nowhere too. And so they use virtual schools to actually supplement and work through a lot of that, because there's not enough kids to actually start a charter school in a lot of cases. And that's where virtual schools come in handy. There's actually a virtual homeschool. Freedom Project USA actually does that for homeschoolers. And they do a virtual school, and they're more, it's online, but it's not traditional online, where most online schools you can go look at school choice, you can go watch the class anytime you want. They are more like a traditional school setting where You will watch the video at specified times. So Tuesday, Thursday, maybe your math and history classes. Monday and Wednesday, maybe your English and spelling and other social studies classes. But you're watching a live teacher present to your child at specific times. So it's like they're sitting in a classroom, but they're watching on a computer screen to get to that. And that's one of the things that homeschooling has in rural areas really has helped a lot, that didn't want to leave the school system. They didn't think they could do it by themselves. And that's become a very popular option where they don't have to pick curriculum. They don't have to worry about different versions of it. They go to this one school, everything's online. They just have to make sure their kids are watching the class at the same time, just like they were sitting in a school classroom. So the virtual schools are a really good option for rural areas.
Is that like the K12.org? I just saw that on a commercial when I was traveling.
Yeah, K12.org is more of the online where you can watch the classes anytime you want, and then you will interact with teachers every so often and stuff, and they're making sure K12 actually does visits to the home and stuff in certain areas and specifics on how they deal with it, especially with special needs. Is how they operate, where Freedom Project is a little different, where you actually have to watch it at certain times. K12, you don't. You watch it whenever you want.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
Typically, homeschoolers aren't allowed to group or congregate together to share learning experiences. So if one parent had, say, more knowledge in science and wanted to share in homeschool with their neighborhood, and the other parent had more English, what information do you have on maybe other states or locations where homeschoolers are actually allowed to congregate and share learning?
Yeah, Illinois actually has several examples. Apple Tree Co-op, they actually do that. You're required as part of joining the homeschool co-op that they take your expertise and you're signed for classes 1 day a week. And so you'll come in with your kids and you will teach all the kids in that co-op. That co-op actually is so big, they actually have sports teams now that actually play all the local Christian schools in basketball, soccer, I forgot which other sports they have now, but they have a lot of kids in it. The Christian school that my daughters went to actually started as a homeschool co-op. And they did that for about 10 years and decided to start their own private Christian school is how they got started. And there's other states around that do the same, allow co-ops and stuff as well. It's great. I mean.
And as the co-op, they don't have to be considered a school, a separate type school.
Well, in Illinois, actually, if you homeschool, you are considered a private school automatically. And then they allow the co-ops and stuff to gather and just do that, and they don't have any restrictions on it being a single family education entity. You can actually join other co-ops and join with others and share resources. I believe Tennessee has the ability to share. Tennessee has a requirement where at least one parent actually has to have a bachelor's degree. And a lot of churches down there will actually do that. And you sign up and say, okay, I'm homeschooling through this church, and the church has people with their bachelor's degrees that then kind of take a look at your stuff every so often to make sure you're doing it so they can follow state law and stuff. So the churches are kind of aggregating the students and stuff as well. I don't know the other states that have that, but I know those two specifically do allow the co-op type where you're share teaching other students.
Just to clarify, here in Wyoming, we are not prohibited in any way from meeting as a co-op for homeschool parents. We are allowed to do that, and it happens all over the state. Yeah.
Cool. That's good to know. Yeah, your laws here are a lot more restrictive than Illinois. Actually, surprising for as bad a state as Illinois is in most things, homeschooling, they are one of the best homeschooling states in the entire country. Iowa just actually lessened their restrictions because of what Illinois does with homeschooling. And Iowa is kind of mimicking what Illinois does now and lessening those restrictions. So, but it's great to hear Wyoming does allow you to do that and stuff, but they need there's a lot of other restrictions they should be getting. You shouldn't be asking permission from the local school district at all. No problem. It's always better to wait for the mics to make sure everybody can hear.
On that topic, earlier you mentioned that we had to get approval with our curriculum, but we actually do not.
You just
we
have to show
submit
it
a curriculum, but we do not get approval from
Okay.
the curriculum.
I can imagine there's some school superintendents that want to change that. And there's school superintendents in Illinois that want to try to change that in our state too, but they never have succeeded. Wisconsin, actually, homeschoolers have to get their curriculum approved by the local school superintendent. And several other states have that same requirement, which is just kind of ridiculous anyway. My email address here, education@heartland.org. My cards are out there. Please pick one up. And if you have questions, please contact us. We've been around since 1984. We actually started in Michigan, moved to Wisconsin, and then have been either in or out of the city of Chicago ever since. Now we're in the suburbs of Chicago. Education is the longest running issue that we have worked with in the history of the Heartland Institute. We also do talk about climate and environment, healthcare, and budget and taxes, and some things with constitution reform and stuff as well. So if there's other topics you're interested in, I can get you in touch with our experts on other topics, but make sure you're talking to Wyoming Liberty first, because that's one thing we are love to do is promote the groups in the state, because they're the ones on the ground, they know what's going on, and we want to supplement and help what they're already doing. So make sure you're involved with Wyoming Liberty, but feel free to contact us as well if there's questions you'd like us to answer and stuff too. Sometimes it's always good for state legislators to go, why is this national organization coming in here? One thing Heartland does that is unique is we do work in all 50 states. We have 4 newspapers. One of them actually is on hiatus right now. But we have healthcare news, environment and climate news, budget and tax news, and the school reform news is actually on hiatus for the moment. We need a new editor. But we send that newspaper, a printed newspaper, to every elected official across the country every month. So they're getting 4 newspapers from us. We skip 2 months every year, so 10 months out of the year, they are getting 4 newspapers from us, one every week in that month, with free market policies-oriented news. It's not breaking news. It's all policy-oriented news. And that's kind of one of the unique things we do at the Heartland Institute. So any legislators you know, remind them that they're getting that paper to go look at it and see what's in there. Might be something that's there that they want to see and they could help them. And we do a study every 2 years from our papers just to see who's using it and how it's being used. And on average, we're at about 63% of state legislators read our paper. And 1/3 of them actually use something from our paper to inform their legislation. And we use a lot of stuff from all of the state networks to put in our newspapers, the content that's what's going on in different states. I know we just did a whole thing on transparency here in Wyoming. We did a research and commentary here to try to help with that issue, because we know that's a big issue that the state legislature is looking at right now here in Wyoming. So I'll turn it back over to Kevin real quick.
And thank everybody one more time for coming out and participating with our Parents Unite event. Watch this space next month. We're trying to put together a Parents Unite advisory board. Everybody that wants to have some empowerment and some say-so and wants to participate, we encourage you to get a hold of us. We don't have an exact time date. Watch this space. We'll get it. Thank you, Facebook Live. And we'll see you next month.
Yeah, okay, real quick, I did forget one thing real quick. When you're talking to legislators or other people, it's real simple. 4 words: fund children, not bureaucracies. Real simple. Tell every legislator you know, fund children, not bureaucracies.
Thank you, Lenny. And thank you for coming out and sharing your time with us.
Oh, you're welcome. I love Wyoming right now.